I'm your host, Kim Cranston, and let me start by introducing our guest today. Margaret Abe-Koga was elected to the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors in November 2024, making history as one of, excuse me here, Minnie, sorry, making history as one of the first two Asian American women on the board in 175 years. Her journey from translating for her immigrant parents to becoming a Harvard graduate and now shaping policy at the local, regional, and state levels reflects her deep commitment to service. Margaret has held several leadership roles. She was Mountain View's first Asian American female mayor. She chaired key regional transportation and environmental boards, and she served under California Governor Jerry Brown on water quality oversight. She has been a fierce advocate for affordable housing, public safety, and sustainability. Early in her career, Margaret worked for U.S. Representative Anna Eshoo, who became her lifelong mentor and helped shape Margaret's approach to leadership. Jessica Speiser was elected to the Santa Clara County Board of Education in 2024. Prior to joining the County Board of Education, she served on the Los Altos School Board of Trustees for 8 years, serving as board president in 2019 and 2023. Jessica has also been involved in leadership of the Santa Clara County School Board Association, serving as its president 2023 to 2024. Jessica is a dedicated proponent of public schools. She attributes her professional and personal successes, having graduated with a bachelor's from Wesley College and a JD from UC Law School, San Francisco, to the strong public school education she received and to the teachers and staff that made that happen. Pete Dailey is the mayor of Los Altos and was elected to the city council in November of 2022. Pete is a single father living with his 2 children in South Los Altos. His children, Emma and Raven, have attended our local public schools, Oak, Block, and Mountain View High. Pete has an undergraduate degree from Berkeley and a master's degree from Pepperdine and Stanford. He retired from the tech industry over a decade ago. Since retirement, Pete has been an active member of the community, coaching baseball and softball, serving on the boards of Mountain View Los Altos Girls Softball and Los Altos Mountain View Pony Baseball, heading up the sports boosters at Block, and serving as the Los Altos Parks and Recreation Commissioner. Pete is also a former board chair and continues to serve as an executive board member for the Lassen Park Foundation, an official partner of the National Park Service. Margaret, Pete, and Jessica, thank you for joining us today. It seems there's constantly news about federal budget cuts to a range of programs with headlines like the following: administration abruptly cuts billions from state health services, and FEMA set for elimination. I'm hoping you can help us better understand what these actions mean to the people living in the communities you each serve on the governmental bodies to which you've been elected. I start with a question for each of you, asking Margaret to start with the answer. The question is, what do you see as the federal budget threats to local public safety, health, and education? Which of your constituents are or will likely be impacted by them? And what might be done to mitigate these threats? Margaret.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Kim, and to all of you for having me on this panel. It's really great to see you all, to see the leadership of Los Altos. So what is happening now is can be quite dire, and for the county, much of what the county does is, we provide safety net services for the most vulnerable. And our county budget is about $12 billion, and a third of that is funding that we receive from the federal government. Much of that is on our healthcare side. So the county runs now 4 hospitals, and we are the second largest public hospital system in the state next to Los Angeles. Our hospital services include trauma care at levels 1 and 2, and Stanford is the 4th trauma level facility here in our area. So after that, you have to travel quite far to get trauma services. So what the House of Representatives passed in the budget resolution would be significant cuts to Medicaid, which in California is called Medi-Cal, $880 billion over 10 years to pay for the administration's priorities. And that is about $1.9 billion for the county budget comes from Medicaid or Medi-Cal. So we're we serve about 456,000 residents through our healthcare system, and most of those patients are Medi-Cal patients. We also serve Medicare patients, and the uninsured. So this would really be quite significant, quite dire. Um, and we're talking a lot about how we're gonna deal with this. Um, last month, so Congressman Lofgren made an important point at her town hall meeting that even if you're not on Medicaid or Medi-Cal, there's a downstream effect to the whole region, and the economics of this assault on us can lead to a closing of a hospital. And that really is something that we have had to start thinking about. So no one really is uh, um, free from the threats that we are looking at, as anybody could end up in a hospital with an emergency. So in terms of mitigation, much of our funds also come from the state, and the state will sometimes backfill. So we're waiting to see what the state will do. Of course, the state isn't in the best financial situation either. I think it was actually doing okay until the fires in Southern California. So all 58 counties in the state will be affected by whatever the federal government does. So it's Medicaid, so the healthcare side. We also have social services, and we're looking at about $400 million cuts there. And a big part of our other work is in public health, as you know, during COVID. We received quite a few grants in that area, and that's another $150 million in that bucket. So it's really, really going to be significant. And as you know, I served on the Mountain View City Council. I see my former colleague here. We're required at the city level to balance our budget. The county will have to figure out how we're going to do that. We actually have facing a $40 million budget deficit to start with, and then these potential cuts. I'm in terms of mitigation, something that I learned at the city, because we do have to generate revenue on our own. I'm looking at ways that the county can do that. One way that we were very successful in Mountain View was to leverage the land that we have. And as you probably know, Mountain View leases land to Google and to a lot of other entities, and those rents and leases amount to about 15 to 20% of the general fund in Mountain View. So similarly, I'm looking at our inventory of parcels that the county owns, to see how we might be able to leverage land to generate revenue. So we will have to make some tough decisions. I think that's important to prioritize what our core services are, and we will be engaging in those conversations.
Great. Thank you very much, Margaret. Same question to you, Jessica. What do you see as the federal budget threats to local public safety, health, and education? Which of your constituents are or will likely be impacted by them, and what might be done to mitigate these threats?
All right, thank you for the question. So not unlike Margaret said, the County Office of Education is the safety net for public education in the county. Local districts are on the front lines and educate most of the students, but the county educates the lowest income with Head Start, and most medically fragile special education students and specialized needs special education students, and the students that are in alternative schools which is somewhere in between district schools and juvenile detention schools. And we run the juvenile detention schools in partnership with the detaining part being done by the county. As it relates to how do we think, what is the impact from the federal government? Well, one big impact that the county is feeling right, like specifically now, is that we are at the end of the 5-year grant we have for Head Start. The cost of Head Start for us, and it is completely borne by federal grants, is $40 million a year. And because we're at the end of that cycle, we ended up on March 15th having to give pink slips to the entirety of our Head Start program because we are unsure that starting July 1, we are going to have the next rev of our grant. We did do an application. We had a non-competitive grant. We have no one competing against us to get this grant, but we are unsure because we also like to educate everyone and focus on equity, that are words that are not necessarily liked by the current administration. And it's important to note that they have consolidated a lot of the regional Health and Human Services offices. Head Start is a program under the HHS, not under the Department of Education. They consolidated them about a week ago. We don't even have a rep to talk to as to how our application is coming along. The students that are in Head Start are quite literally the lowest income students we have. And it is, we offer through that program, the federal government offers a whole, literally a wraparound services to the family. The kids are getting healthcare through it. The families are learning how to be better parent, how to parent, how to get jobs, how to advocate for themselves. So it's very scary. As it relates to everyday students in our local districts and a lot of our programs, it is important to note that most of our funding does come from the state. And that also any of the things that you have heard about, like the letters being sent to all public schools saying you're not going to get federal fundings unless you sign this letter. The state's already fighting that letter. We're not signing that letter. We weren't going to sign that letter anyway, but we have the state protecting us. And we have had situations where if we are worried about that Head Start funding, so Assembly Member Patrick Ahrens has already said he's trying to see if there's ways we could get that Head Start money from the state, but the state also is crunched. So we do have a lot of people wanting to support. Whether we're gonna get the support is another story, but that all being said, we're in this together. I think I covered all your questions as it relates to this one.
Great, thank you, Jessica. Pete, same question for you. What do you see as federal budget threats to local public safety, health, and education? Which of your constituents are or will likely be impacted by them? And what might be done to mitigate these threats?
Well, the first thing I will note is that the city is in a particularly privileged position because 75% of our revenue is from property tax, and that never goes down. It just doesn't go down. I mean, even if one property is reassessed, overall, the property tax revenue always increases. And thankfully, we run a very conservative, small c conservative, sort of forecasting and modeling on that. And we always, at least in the last, in the 3 years that I've been in public office, and we have run a surplus as a result. We didn't always run a surplus in the past, but we have better financial management now. So that's good news. That's really good news. The other 25% of our revenue comes from sales tax, more or less. Transportation and occupancy tax is a part of it, and then sales tax is a part of it. And that will probably potentially suffer. We get federal grants for a few things, and those are likely to be affected. There's going to be 3 areas of impact for the city of Los Altos. First and foremost, the impacts of tariffs and uncertain economic policies have made an immediate have had an immediate impact. We already feel that impact as we go out to buy new fleet vehicles or just any of the things that we spend money on an ongoing basis to run the city. That's already, everything is more expensive and only going to get even more expensive. The second area of impact is in disaster preparedness and recovery. Local jurisdictions put a lot of trust and reliance on FEMA. And right now, we don't even know if FEMA will continue to exist. And that will completely throw disaster preparedness and recovery into disarray, in part because of how FEMA reimburses local jurisdictions. And so net on that is that we've taken it upon ourselves to increase our reserves. The city usually runs about a 25% operating reserve specifically for natural disasters. What that means is, let's say our operating budget is $60 million a year. We keep 15 million in reserve for disasters. We've doubled that reserve. We're at 50% operating budget reserve, right? And that's a good thing, to be prepared. And hopefully we will be able to move that money back out of that reserve into our general fund at some point in the future. But we can't now. And the result of that is that, you know, potholes go unfilled and parking lots go unrepaved, and the other things that the city should be doing are underfunded as a result of our desire to set aside those sort of rainy day or, you know, fiery day reserves. And then lastly, the federal grants. So we've got an $8 million federal grant for transportation around pedestrian and bike safety on San Antonio that we expect will go away. So that project is going to be indefinitely delayed. Other critical sort of circulation elements of public safety that we're worried about, the Homestead Corridor project. Margaret and I were talking about this before the meeting today. You know, the city will have to step up, particularly in the area of the Homestead Corridor, and contribute some funding to progress that project that we didn't anticipate spending. Thankfully, we, as I said, tend to run a surplus. So we've got quite a lot of unreserved surplus and can make the commitment to, you know, step in to cover at least a material portion of the design costs, which are the next threshold for us to cross in the Homestead Project Corridor. So in a nutshell, it's those three areas. It's, you know, tariffs causing increased costs, uncertainty causing us to set aside larger financial reserves, and then, you know, the loss of some of these grants, particularly pertaining to a lot of road work and circulation stuff. But I think we have some concern about grants in other areas as well, relating to public safety.
Great. Thank you very much, Pete. Another question that Pete partially answered, but for Margaret and Jessica, what impacts do you think the administration tariffs will have on local public safety, health, and education? Starting with Margaret.
Thank you. Yes, so as the mayor said, tariffs are definitely are affecting us, and we see it mostly in, I see it actually quite a bit in the transportation area. I serve on VTA as well as the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and Caltrain. And so when it comes to construction projects, we actually already were seeing quite a bit of increases yearly. It's something around 7%, but we're starting to see more like 20, 30% increases. it was before, it was the supply chain issue during COVID. Now tariffs are affecting that. So that's really where we see it is just the cost of everything is increasing. And I've learned over the time that, especially with these construction projects, and this will tie into the homestead corridor, but the sooner we can do it, the better. Time is really our biggest challenge, and so we need to continue to keep these projects moving forward as much as possible. So finding other ways, and I appreciate pizza, and that the cities are doing much better than we are at the county at this time, just really because of our funding source differences. But any way we can continue to keep these projects moving is really of most importance.
Thank you. Jessica, same question. What impacts do you think the administration's tariffs will have on local education?
Well, basically, things are already costing more. So buying all the supplies you need for classrooms, et cetera, is costing more. But we're also in the middle of our budgeting process for the next school year. We approve a budget by middle of June. And you have to put in what your assumptions are for that budget. So those assumptions are always conservative as conservative as to revenues, and conservative over making sure you put what you think the right price of things are going to be, and you generally try to think it's going to cost more. So that's what it looks like, what the development is starting to look like. What does that mean? That means that it means more layoffs for the County Office of Education, because certain things we are going to need. We don't want to get rid of people. It's just we're falling into a situation where kids are going to need things in the classroom. So it's balancing all that. So that one is hitting us in all different ways. Like what do we buy? We buy supplies for the classrooms, and city buys, it buys things to make the city better, et cetera. We're all getting hit on the different types of things we buy. In the end, it's just not good.
Okay, thank you. Another question, you'd referenced federal threat to end FEMA. And the last two Los Altos Community Coalition sessions were on fire threats to the community. First with Michael Wara about why we're threatened, and second with local fire officials talk about what they're doing to prepare for it. I wonder, and maybe this is for Margaret and Pete, can you be more specific about what the threat to cut FEMA might mean for us, both in terms of paying for any damages that might be caused by a fire, but also any impact it might have on funds to work towards fire prevention. I remember a conversation I had recently with a city official that if FEMA didn't come through in funds to support the Palisades, Altadena fires, it could essentially bankrupt the state, which is a second level threat. But Margaret first, and then Pete, are there any more details in terms of what FEMA cutting could do to us locally in terms of fire threats?
Do you want to go ahead first?
I can talk to it a little bit. A lot of times the fire prevention efforts that we have are actually funded through public-private partnerships, and the public elements of those partnerships are often the federal government, but the institutions that provide grants and manage those programs are nonprofit organizations, right? And so we have a number of them here in our area. I just encountered a situation with my home in Tehama County where we have a program operated by the Sierra Institute to remove 745 trees from our community. That's federally funded, and those funds have been suspended. And so now that fuel removal program is halted. So, and actually with some of the partners that I've spoken to locally, the initial response was, oh, we're fine. You know, we haven't received any indication that our funding is going to be cut. And my response was, okay, well, just, you know, keep your head on a swivel. And lo and behold, in the last few weeks, they've all started to get, you know, letters and other indications of cuts to funding sources. And so we'll see this trickle down. You know, you may have federal funding removed and large nonprofit partners losing hundreds of millions of dollars. And then it's going to take a few months for that to sort of trickle down. And we'll probably feel the impact more so in the summer and fall, because that's when you want to do you want fire season. The old concept of fire season anyway starts in the fall. So, you know, our fuel abatement efforts really need to be in full swing right now. And the way we're going to have to, I think, compensate for the loss of federal support for those programs is with labor, volunteer labor. Like, everybody here should tell 10 of your friends, hey, let's go up into the Los Altos Hills with, you know, gloves and work boots and just start hauling out dead wood off the ground.
Should they coordinate that with any organizations, Pete? I assume you're
Absolutely.
not suggesting they randomly go up.
No, absolutely. And I do think that I mean, so I'm looking at Krista nodding her head because she's been a catalyst for putting together a number of stakeholders to try and sort of bring some of these initiatives forward. And so, you know, I'll tell you, I never really take my hat off, my mayor's hat or my literal hat, you know, whatever the case may be. But I went for a hike. I've told this story recently. You know, I was just going for a hike in the Los Altos Hills. Well, I couldn't stop myself. I came back after the hike and told Gabe we got to get on the phone with the executive director of the Peninsula Open Space because the stewardship. We need to see the stewardship plan. We need to know what's going on. There's a hot pot there, and we got to get on it. And I can't literally walk down a trail without counting the downed trees and looking at the crowns of the trees and everything else. And so no, we will coordinate, but I think there's an appetite as well in our community for volunteers to feel like they can actually do something. And so, you know, we're going to get out there and we're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to have a couple of work days and we're going to reduce our fuel loads.
Just so people know, just real quick, that Resilient Los Altos and Hidden Villa have a collaborative for volunteers that are doing clearing along all of that Hidden Villa, you know, property line space up in the hills. So just reach out to either one of those organizations.
And the ED at Hidden Villa is awesome. And that's, by the way, where my hike terminated that day. So I'm encouraged by the response from Hidden Villa, but unfortunately, you know, stewardship is a balkanized effort in the Los Altos Hills for sure.
Thanks. Krista, might you put into chat contact information if people want to follow up? Thank you. Margaret, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yes, I think Pete said it well. For the county, public safety, both fire and law enforcement through the sheriff's office is mostly funded through local funds. So that's one positive. You know, FEMA would come in place when we have a major disaster, and just the sheer amount of you know, resources that we would need to rebuild is something that would be dire, of course. So it definitely is a threat. The other part of FEMA that I've learned is that during COVID, many of our cities and the county started receiving relief funds or reimbursements for all of the costs that we incurred during COVID. And for the county, it's about $500 million, and we were able to draw down that quickly. So that was what enabled the county to buy a regional medical health center, the hospital on the east side that we purchased and just opened. But there's another 250 million there that we have not received yet, and we're expecting that probably not to come in. So definitely does affect us. But in terms of fire prevention, as Pete mentioned, there's a lot of things that folks can do on their own. And then fortunately, Los Altos Hills has its own fire district. So it has its own funding source there, and been doing pretty well. So they've been asking, what they can do to contribute. We have a voluntary group called Fire Safe Council, and they are a nonprofit, and they do work on things like coming in to assess your home, on how to make it more fireproof and whatnot. So that's a great organization to get involved with, but certainly appreciate individuals and residents doing their part. We are talking to Stanford now, our office, and looking at putting a fire summit together in August to bring their experts. Stanford's been very kind to offer their knowledge and expertise, and so they have some professors working on this issue, and so we will be hopefully being able to bring them together with our local elected officials and others fire involved in the fire area to talk about what we can do when particular area that's come up quite a bit as I've gone out to the community to meet with people is evacuation routes, and making sure that we have those laid out. So we'll be sure to invite all of you to our fire summit once we get our details together.
Great, thanks so much. Let's see, before we open this up for questions from the attendees today, Margaret, any closing thoughts or remarks?
I just said I wanted to mention that this is budget season for all of us, as we are all on the fiscal cycle of July 1st. So the county will be conducting budget workshops in the month of May and June over 3 days. And so very much invite you all to participate. It's important for us to hear from the community what our priorities are. So please tune in to those, and feel free to come by in person too if you'd like. I myself, our office will be doing a budget town hall on May 7th from 6 to 7 p.m. And so I encourage you to attend, and I've asked LA to put the link into the chat for our online budget town hall. And I think that's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Margaret. Jessica, any closing thoughts or remarks?
Yeah, I mean, the good news, and it is, and Pete had mentioned this earlier, is that our education is funded by our local property taxes, as is, betterment of our cities, et cetera. But like, as it relates to the Department of Education possibly going away, California itself, and therefore Los Altos, is going to generally be fine, because we are a locally funded district. Where we get hit in all of this is, in fact, the special education does get funding from federal government. Title I, students that are homeless, low socioeconomic, we do get funding for that. And the rules, the things that the Department of Education used to be pushing, which is, equity in education, and making sure, the civil rights portion of the Department of Education, which we know the current administration does not care about at all. But at the end of the day, we're going to be fine in this area. We'll find ways to be resilient, because we are in the states that we are in. California does care about every student, and our local school districts, a lot of them are community funded basic aid districts. So we're going to be okay as long as the economy stays up, and our area continues to be a destination where people buy homes. So there's hope, but we're always going to be, bracing for the worst. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Pete, any closing thoughts or remarks?
Out of chaos can come opportunity. So I would hope that, we can find silver linings. When federal support is withheld, the proper response is for local jurisdictions to sort of sack up and get together and really, row in the same direction. And so that kind of community building and unity of spirit and purpose can be our silver lining. We can get volunteers motivated to go up and clear ground fuel. We can, come together as a community to continue to support our local businesses. I'm redoubling my own efforts to make sure that my tax dollars come back to Los Altos whenever possible. Mountain View being a sister city, I do, sprinkle a little love over there, but generally speaking, I'm just redoubling my efforts to reinforce these local connections and hope that, teamwork will make the dream work.
Great. Thank you, Pete. Margaret, Jessica, and Pete, thank you so much for a very informative conversation. I'd now like to open it up to the attendees for questions. If you have a question, please raise your virtual hand now, just so we'll have a sense of how many questions we have and can deal with them accordingly. Again, remember, one question per person and no speeches, please. Let's see. Claire, you're first.
Okay, my question is, I was, just to let you know, I was on TV last night. There was a episode about the Los Angeles schools and a very sneaky ICE meeting at a school. And so I'm wondering if that is happening at all in any of the Santa Clara County schools, because I know there are some where there are a lot of immigrant families. So, Jessica?
Yes. So the state has some laws or board policies already in, there were laws that then became board policies the last time that Trump was president. And it means that that our school districts won't allow ICE on our campuses or to take students from our campuses unless they have a judicial warrant to do so. I can tell you pretty much all of our districts have all those board policies and care to follow those board policies. There are a couple bills right now, one by Maritsuchi, I believe it's AB 49, that are supposed to even make it even better. Like they can't really even, they have to, the law will even become better for school districts. And so we're quite hopeful. And while right at the beginning of Trump's presidency, there had been like little scares that there was ICE activities on campus, but and I believe that it is likely, maybe Margaret can speak to it more. There's this rapid response network that is in place that there's a phone number that you call and that you find out whether you can tell them that there's in fact ICE activity somewhere, but you could also find out whether the rumor of ICE activity was in fact that. We have not had any specific ICE activity in any of our Santa Clara County school district sites as of yet.
Margaret, you want to add anything to that?
Yes, so at the county, we do have a policy that we will not cooperate with ICE, and especially as schools, the other in sensitive areas, we don't allow. Hospitals is another one. So these policies are being challenged, and the county has been very proactive in either filing lawsuits on our own or joining lawsuits that to combat these changes that the federal government's trying to make. Birthright citizenship was another one that the county filed a lawsuit on. So in terms of rapid response, the county did put in a $5 million funding to create I think the system was actually already there, but there's a network. And as Jessica mentioned, there's a rapid response piece. We've been conducting Know Your Rights sessions in the community. There's a little red and yellow card that we've been handing out to folks. And then just, sharing information about what you don't and don't need to do. Like you don't have to open the door if someone knocks, making sure that you have a plan. Something I really didn't know about, learned about, what do you do with your children if you're taken away? And so there's an affidavit that you can fill out that designates someone to care for your children. So just providing that kind of information to the community has been very important and I think well received. But we don't participate or we don't cooperate with ICE. Our county services are open for business, and we will continue to fight any efforts to change that.
Thank you. Next question, Gary.
A question for Jessica. There's been some talk about rethinking the concept of basic aid districts. Do you think that's very realistic?
I don't know if there's been a talk of rethinking basic aid districts per se, but there has been a bill that Cortese has brought out called it's like equalization bill. And the idea on that one is that in banner years for the state, he's asking that money is put into this account, kind of like an endowment. And that in years that are bad, that money is sent to LCFS districts or a very barely there basic aid districts, because not all basic aid districts are alike. You may be solely relying on your property tax, but it's just at the edge. Or some where Los Altos School District is somewhere in the middle as it relates to that. This Mountain View Wisman, actually Mountain View Wisman may actually be better than Los Altos School District, but that's a whole different story based on all the funding that comes to Los Altos and Mountain View. So there isn't any talk of changing basic aid yet, but there is talks of ways to make sure that districts that are funded from the state that really don't have enough money are getting more money, that they are equitably getting what they should in order for those students to get the resources that they need to succeed.
Okay.
Thank you, Jessica. Any other questions from attendees? I don't see any other virtual hands up. Last call. While I'm waiting for a minute here. Oh, Gary has his hand up again. Gary.
Well, since nobody else was speaking up, got one for Pete. I presume the city is working on reevaluating the budget with the fiscal year coming up pretty fast. Do you have any guidelines in terms of how you set priorities and where the cuts might be?
We are coming up on our budget cycle. We're not doing a reevaluation. We're doing a budget for next year, and we've already established our priorities. So
that's not going to change.
Yeah, no, our budget's going to reflect our priorities. What changes is the amount of reserves that we set aside for these things that we're concerned about. So I mentioned disaster preparedness reserve has already doubled. So there will be other reserves that have to increase as well. But then we do a mid-year budget review. So we'll look back at the budget and assess whether or not we made the proper assumptions when we do our mid-year review.
But if you're increasing the amount of reserves, then you have to decrease something somewhere else.
That's not necessarily true. This year we had $20 million in unreserved surplus.
I see. That helps.
Yes.
Thanks, Gary and Pete. Claire, you have your hand up?
Got another question I thought of.
Yep, go ahead.
this really is for Margaret, I think, but considering the federal government's SAVE Act, my other thing is voter rights. The SAVE Act, is the county doing, just in case Senate can't get their act together, is the county doing any beginning work on if that act actually passes?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what is the act?
The
State?
SAVE Act, I can't remember but you know, making it secure, you have to have a citizen,
Oh,
you have to
yes.
show that you were born in the United States to get you know, to register to vote and things like that. It's that.
Yes. We're not doing any preparations for it yet. Again, these are potential lawsuits that the county can sign on to, and that's really the area that we're focused on. Is we have a very active county council office, and in 2016 they were very proactive in fighting the federal government's actions in court, and we are doing that again. So it's really more to you know, continue to fight to protect our rights. So we're that's where we're really focused on. So we haven't really made any preparations, to be frank, in terms of our registrar of voters office, but we will respond accordingly.
Great. Jenny, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm very bad at that gesture there. Jessica, would you please address the trans and LGBTQ question for education as it stands in Santa Clara County education? Fine does not define it for me.
So the laws of the state of California are that you are not to discriminate against in education against any student, race, gender identity, all, and I mean, it runs the complete gamut of your identity, whether it's race or whether you're gay, bisexual, trans, queer, bi, etc. So the state of it is that the laws in California protect our students, and I know that the state is fighting anything from the federal government on that. I know Newsom hasn't said some nice stuff recently as it relates to trans women in sports, but that's not the law. So we are protected, and our state will fight against it. And I know we have our own county has passed resolutions saying that we will make sure that all students get the best education possible and treated equally across all of our districts. So again, it's that situation where we should be happy we're in California, but we should be also fighting across the country, so kids in other states get the same protections we give our own.
I think it's day to day, so I hope the
Yeah,
county board and your executive are
Yeah.
really
yeah.
tuned.
Oh yeah, and it's good. I never mentioned this because it didn't necessarily have anything to do with federal. By the way, we have hired, as of Wednesday, a new county superintendent, and he starts May 1st. And his lens is full on equity, huge amount of experience in it, and a huge amount of experience in special education and also community engagement. And it's not just community as just normal community members, it's every stakeholder involved in whatever decision is being made or process that's being gone through. His name is Dr. David Tostin, and we're very excited to bring him on. And no matter how much I've tried to scare him away with all the work that we expect him to do, he still wants to do it. So we're so lucky.
Where is he from?
He is from now he works for the California Community CCE Community. I forgot what the E stands for, but he has actually been employed for the El Dorado County Office of Education and ran their SELPA. And he had started as a teacher way back in the day, became a school psychologist, then became an administrator. The man is amazing Zen character who I got trained by him this weekend at California School Boards Association, had a training for county board members, and he was one of the trainers telling us how to do community engagement. Somebody asked kind of a hard-hitted question, or they were kind of upset about something, and just hearing him answer the question, and he did it in a way that was showing that he had heard him and not being defensive to the question, and then just answering the question of the person. And I'm like, oh my God, we need him to teach all politicians and just people to do that. We're very, very lucky.
Great. Thank you very much, Jessica.
You're welcome.
So Margaret, Jessica, and Pete, I want to thank you again very, very much for participating in this very informative session. I hope you might be willing to join us again in a few months to provide an update on these matters. I'd say after the dust settles, but I'm not sure if that will happen, as it seems to be a process of continuing kicking up dust. We're going to end promptly by 9:30 today. And before you go, a few announcements. Our next meeting will be on Friday, May 2nd from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. Please join us for a discussion entitled Reflections with Congresswoman Anna Eshoo. If you'd like to be added to the LACC mailing list, please send an email to info@losaltoscommunitycoalition.org. This email is posted for your convenience in chat along with our YouTube channel. And a big thank you to the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation for providing LACC with financial and in-kind support. So again, thank you once again, Margaret, Jessica, and Pete, and thank you all for joining us today. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Have a great weekend.